On the Talkback Show, on the radio, or whatever audiovisual device you choose to use, welcome to the GBC podcast, where we talk about the Packers and our hometown of Green Bay. This is episode 54, created on September 26th, 2023. I'm John. I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. Along with me, Jeff in Minnesota and Neil on the East Coast. Say hello, gentlemen, and tell us what you're drinking.
Hello, gentlemen. Tonight from Perennial Artisan Ales, I'm drinking 17, a mint chocolate stout, and the 17 is in honor of the number of points scored by the opposing team this weekend.
I'm drinking a Dewey Beer Company Secret Machine, blueberry, blackberry, and raspberry. They make fabulous beers.
It's like a Bloody Mary almost.
It's just loaded with fruit and always delicious, all the different variants of it.
And I have with me Grandma Lambo's Apple Pie, a beverage recipe that you can only get in Lot 1 while tailgating at Packer home games. All right, you can find us on YouTube and Twitter at Green Bay Chat and Facebook at the GBC Podcast, Green Bay Chat, and just the audio is available on Spotify by searching for Green Bay Chat. Our topics, of course, a review of the home opener weekend in Green Bay. We're going to look around the league in Week 3, preview of Week 4, the short week, and then a quick history lesson for us as well. So let's start with the big stuff, Neil. It was a game that had an interesting ending to it. I would say the least. You had a nice front row seat to it, so to speak, because you stayed in the stadium. It had to have just gotten electric and bonkers at the end.
We can leave the Packers flags up until February. This is our place. We make the rules. My lover. Yeah, it was just a gorgeous opening day of the Packers season. Just showing up, all of the atmosphere leading into the game, and then the fans were at their full throat. It was a just game. It wasn't quite playoff atmosphere, but it was a game where everyone was into it. You had the alumni coming out at halftime, but just going right to the introductions and the roar in the crowd when Jordan Love was introduced as the last player said everything that you needed to know about where this game was going as far as the fans were concerned.
The thing about the first half, though, there was no fireworks. And that's the interesting thing. After the tailgate party ends and the game has begun and we're still cleaning up, we have a TV outside in the parking lot. We are actually watching the game on the local channel, on the local over-the-air broadcast, but it's on a little bit of a delay. So if something big happens, the fireworks go off and we're like, oh, quick, let's check it and see what happened. And in that first half, we had no fireworks. And I actually had then driven home and got home at halftime and watched the rest of the game at home.
So that is an understatement. There were no fireworks.
No.
There wasn't much of anything in the first half. So was this like maybe a young team, a hangover from the loss last week, maybe?
We kept shooting ourselves in the foot in the end, right? I think that one of the things that was striking in going back and reviewing what we did in that game is that you take our first half drives. We started out on our own 48 on our first drive and got to the New Orleans 44. Oh, yeah, then we had a holding penalty and a false start. Our second drive, we started at our 25, went to their 41 before having a false start and going back to the 48. Our third drive, we only made it out to our own 46, but a holding penalty, -10. And then our fourth drive, our final drive of the first half, we started at our 18. We should have started at our 28, but we had a penalty on our special teams. Then we had a legal formation.
Special teams?
All of the assets. The assets certainly played their role. And even with that, we made it all the way to the New Orleans 27 before being sacked, going back to New Orleans 41 for a punt. We made it 3 times in the first half into New Orleans territory and got 0 points out of those 3 drives that made it well into New Orleans territory. Every time it's something that we shot ourselves in the foot. We had penalties on each of our first 6 offensive drives in the game, and that is going to make it very difficult to move the ball.
Well, it was just brutal to watch, right? It was like, we shouldn't be getting false start penalties at home. That should not happen. And it was just poor execution, nerves. I don't know. But it wasn't pretty to watch. That's for sure.
But it was disjointed. I think that's the problem, is it was disjointed because our defense actually played okay.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just start out on our first drive. We took them out on a 3-and-out on the first drive with a Kenny Clark sack on 3rd and 10. They went -9 yards on their first drive. From a fan's perspective, that was a perfect first drive for New Orleans. They go 3 and out. They're pushed backwards. We get the ball back. We get the ball back at almost midfield. And then we decide that, let's do a holding on the first play, a false start on the second play, go from a 1st and 10 at midfield to a 1st and 25 at our own 33. And we had 3 great plays after that. A pass to Musgrave, Love running, and a pass to Dobbs. But when you've got to make up 25 yards, 23 yards in 3 plays isn't good enough. And anytime that 23 yards in 3 plays isn't good enough, you're going to have problems.
Brutal. Just bad. But the defense, they hung in there. And this is sort of what we talked about. Whereas if the offense isn't either ready or sharp or whatever, maybe the defense will carry the day. And I think that's what came to fruition here.
Realistically, the defense did only give up 10 points.
Yeah.
There is that other 7 points that I'm sure we'll talk about. But the defense did play well. Especially that like Neil said, that first drive and that sack from Kenny Clark. Man, that lit everything on fire, and it just like kind of fizzled out, or there wasn't anything to keep that fire flowing. And then you have that crazy 4th down play, which I think on paper, maybe it looked good, or in practice, I'm sure it went well. But once that ball hit the ground, it became, Keystone Cops, and it was a fire drill. You had to make something happen. Love did have an open receiver. He just didn't have the footing. He just did not execute very well. And it's one of those things that I think just kind of ripped the morale out of the team a little bit. It's like, I think that they just kind of sat around and went, oh, we're trying too hard and things aren't working. And, that precision overall for the offense wasn't there.
Yeah.
And you could tell that it was affecting them as each series went on in that first half.
Yeah. And that play just wasn't necessary, right? It was a 4th and 2 at the 44-yard line. You don't need some crazy throw it back to the quarterback to throw it long downfield. You just need 2 yards in that situation. Do a play that's going to give you the best chance of getting 2 yards.
And watching that play initially, when he kind of slipped and then he threw it at that awkward, I was like, oh God, I hope he's not hurt. That could have been disaster. I mean, fortunately he got up and it was a bad, ugly pass and there was no injury, but yeah, that was such an awkward, weird slip and fall. And, fortunately there really wasn't any defenders around him that, hit him or whatever at that weird leg angle that could have injured him.
And that play set up New Orleans' only touchdown on offense. They started out with great field position from their own 44. Their first play, they have a run for 1 yard and then 15 yards of unnecessary roughness on Kenny Clark. We're decided to shoot ourselves in the foot on special teams later, offense earlier and later, and then defense right on that play. They don't start at the 44. They don't have that 15-yard unnecessary roughness. They may not score on that play. And again, that was their only touchdown. They had a 56-yard drive, 15 from penalties. It wasn't an overly impressive drive other than a really good catch by Olave, which was a continuing theme as far as the game was concerned. But fundamentally, they took advantage of our errors, and that's what a decent team or a good team is going to do.
That's true. However, then what didn't happen for the Packers is they didn't really seem to panic. Right? They didn't, other than the play that clearly the trickeration didn't trick, but they just kind of slogged along. But again, they give up the punt return for a touchdown, asshats strike again, but there didn't really seem to be a lot of panic. I know what was the feeling in the stands, Neil? Were people kind of getting on edge a little bit, or was it just like, okay, we're going to be okay here?
Well, when we went down 7-0, it was like, well, okay, that's not great. But we come back, and I'd say when we followed that next drive up with, again, several penalties, we get down again to their 41-yard line and then get pushed back to the 48. We punt the ball, not a perfect situation, but the following drive, we actually stopped them. We stopped New Orleans. They had a 7-play drive starting from their own 10. We had a sack on 3rd and 9 from their 22nd, the first of the 3 Rashawn Gary sacks. And so it was like, okay, well, we're going to get ourselves into the game. The Packers get the ball back, and it's a 6-play, 10-yard drive with another penalty. And it was that following that was the punt return for a touchdown. And I don't think it was panic as far as the fans were concerned. I certainly didn't feel panic, but there was well, this is not great as a start, but we were certainly still supporting the team. And it just hadn't happened yet.
The quote, Dark Helmet, skip that part. Don't go back to that part ever again. Let's ignore that part happen. Go to near the end of the half then. There has to be something said about the defense, though, to their credit that they do hold New Orleans to just a field goal to end the half. I guess that's some saving grace that your score at halftime is 17-0 instead of 21-0.
Right. I mean, they get down close to the goal line, 82-yard drive, 14 plays. They only got 3 points because I think, yes, they score a touchdown there. We're potentially in trouble. Of course, that previous drive, we had made it to the 27. So it was just sort of this continuing series of errors that kept us from performing at our best on offense. And New Orleans took advantage of them. And I think the took advantage of what they had is a critical part, because if you look at these stats at halftime, and I kept looking at the end, they kept having the yardage markers at the game. New Orleans only had a 16-yard advantage over us in the first half. They didn't blow us away in the first half. 10 first downs to 7, 16-yard advantage, only 22 more yards passing. We actually had more rushing yards in the first half. The only big difference from a numerical perspective in the numbers in the first half, we had 7 penalties for 60 yards. They only had 2 penalties for 15 yards. And yes, obviously we had that fatal error on special teams, but the numbers didn't say that they were dominating us no matter what the scoreboard said.
That's the feeling I got too. It wasn't like, this is hopeless. This is not, they're going to get blown out. They're not showing up for the home opener. It was kind of like they just haven't found like a rhythm. Well, offense specifically, defense, but this is what we had hoped for, right? Kind of keeping them in it, not spectacular, but not giving up big chunk plays. There were no, unfortunately, the Packers, the offense, they had the interception. Okay. The first turnover, of the year, but not forcing things, not looking completely desperate or out of, just a little out of sorts, and hoping our fortunes would change.
And there were a lot of things that worked well. I rewatched the game, and there are a lot of plays that we made, these continuing series of plays, a possession pass to Dobbs, a possession pass to Musgrave. There were a ton of great passes to Musgrave. Dillon was good in the first half as far as his running was concerned. We did a lot of things that were well. It was just shooting ourselves continually in the foot that hurt us on those first 6 drives. And once we got past that point, it was a different ball game.
With all the stats that you've given, Neil, there's really, as we say, there's only one that matters, and that's the score. What's the feeling at halftime? I know you said that the alumni got introduced. People were probably into it, but what's the feeling in the crowd being down 17 at halftime?
It certainly wasn't a happy feeling. It was well, this might not be our day. Listen, at that point, we had been outscored 30-0 in the last 30 points that have been scored for the Packers, considering the previous 2 games. There was a feeling certainly that maybe things were not going to go our way that day, but it wasn't a desperation. It wasn't we can't do this. We thought certainly we saw the game. We knew that we were playing well enough. We were playing close enough to New Orleans that we should have been competitive, and we kept making the mistakes. And it certainly was not a situation where we thought that this can't be undone. It was we're just not doing it so far.
So there's a stat that I saw that surprised the heck out of me. You mentioned Luke Musgrave. He had a team high 6 receptions for 49 yards. According to Elias, he has the most catches in a single game by a Green Bay tight end going back to 1960. 6 catches?
Well, it's certainly not a record for yardage, but that's really a remarkable statistic. And I guess that's how we use our tight ends, is that we use them as a change of pace versus our wide receivers. But I'm going to stay on that theme of receptions. And Musgrave was one of 3 Wookiee wide receivers that were involved in that game, or Wookiee receivers as far as the game was concerned. Our rookies had 13 receptions for 157 yards in that game. Reed 363, Musgrave 649, Wicks 445, 157 yards from Wookiee wide receivers. That is really spectacular. That is integration of young players in a way that you usually can't integrate young players this quickly.
Great. And it was great to see. In some ways, there's really not a choice, right? It's either sort of sink or swim, but it seems to be, with repetition, with a little more experience, that they're showing up.
Right. And just imagine when we get all of our players back on top of it. I mean, imagine Dobbs being able to be a number 1, Wicks being a number 4, Reed being a number 3, and you've got Watson on top of all of that.
That's what we're hoping for, and that's hopefully what we're going to see Thursday night.
We did talk about needing someone to get 100 yards, too. We need someone to get 100 yards on there. Dobbs with the 73, you throw that in there as well. The numbers are really good. especially when you look at how that ball is spread around. And that's a theme in Green Bay football. Favre did it, Rodgers did it, and now Love is doing it as well. So we have a good complement of receivers that are going to catch the ball, that are going to put yardage up there and move the ball down the field.
Yeah, but we didn't start moving the ball down the field in the second half. You figure, okay, we get the ball first. We're going to have this opportunity to make it a 17-7 or at least a 17-3 game. Dillon -6 on the first play of the third quarter. Pass to Musgrave 7. We get to a 3rd and 9, which seems manageable. And then we have a false start, which makes it a 3rd and 14. And that's what led to the essentially long punt by Jordan Love that was technically an interception. But if it's a 3rd and 9, does he make that long play, or is it something that's going to be more possession oriented? I think it might be an entirely different play in that situation. Now, thankfully, they got the ball back and basically did nothing, 5 yards in 5 plays. But then we went 3 and out in our second drive of the third quarter with only 1 yard, a Toure offensive pass interference star of that sequence. It's not looking great as far as the beginning of the second half is concerned.
So you talked about halftime. You saw the alumni. There was a little more buzz in the air. They come out. They're still flat. They're still, defense is still keeping them in it. So what is kind of the attitude in the stands? What's going on?
It's we're supporting our team, but it was definitely not that, hey, we're absolutely winning this game. It was, we're going to keep cheering this team on no matter what. And I think that was an overall theme of the day.
Does it change with the Derek Carr injury? First of all, Rashawn Gary's having a great game. And then Carr gets knocked out of the game. And especially as you're going through the third quarter and into the fourth quarter, that defense is holding the team in the game. The offense just isn't putting on the points on the board, but there has to be a point where you're looking at that clock and you're saying, we're going to run out of time. Sure, we're maybe turning the corner on things, but are we going to run out of time? I know that was my concern watching it.
This is a pet peeve of mine as far as the way commentators have talked about this game beforehand. They talk about if Derek Carr stays in that game, New Orleans is going to win. I'm sorry, Derek Carr did not have a great game. He was 13 of 18 for only 103 yards, sacked 3 times for 21 yards. Jameis Winston's stats were fundamentally no different than Derek Carr's stats. I don't think that actually made a difference. And honestly, I thought that Jameis Winston seemed more dangerous throwing the football than Derek Carr did. And so maybe it had a slight deflating effect, but fundamentally, you look at what New Orleans did. I don't see that they played that much differently with Carr versus with Winston. And so I don't think that that was anywhere near the effect on the game as this has been made out to be post-game.
Well, because they really weren't running the ball that much. Once Carr was out, they still kept throwing the ball, not with great success, but they never really tried to run, to establish a run, to pound it along. Maybe that was their undoing, who knows? So suddenly, as the third quarter progresses, we start to have some offensive life.
And it's remarkable. We started a drive on the 10 once, got pushed back to the 5 because of penalty. We started on the 5, the drive after that, and somehow took that starting at the 5-yard field position into a 12-play, 82-yard drive where we started to make consecutive plays, where we started to not shoot ourselves in the foot with penalties and forcing these really long plays. And the third quarter is where we turn things around. Yes, all of the scoring was in the fourth quarter. Yes, that drive that ended the third quarter did not lead to any points, but that is where we started to establish dominance. And I'd like to point out the yardage totals in that third quarter. Again, noting that the Packers did nothing on their first 2 drives. In the third quarter, the Packers outgained New Orleans 89 yards to 24. We outgained New Orleans in the passing game 81 yards to 5 in that third quarter. Even though we didn't score, we started to assert ourselves on that drive, and that set the tone for the rest of the game.
My concern in the third quarter there, when they did drive it and they came away with no points, that was one where I was thinking, oh boy, is this sort of like the prior week, right? Is this going to somehow come back and bite us in the butt?
The only question I have is on that fourth down, when you have an opportunity to kick a field goal and based on the score, you're going to need the field goal. I was surprised that they didn't make that attempt.
On the other hand, it's a 4th and 2. They're at the New Orleans 13. You need to score 2 touchdowns at least. 4th and 2 is a situation where statistically you are almost certainly better off going for the first down and giving yourself a chance at the touchdown. You've got to not just score 3 points and 2 touchdowns. You need to have those 2 touchdowns at some point. And being at the 13 on a 4th and 2 seems a great place to start that. It didn't work out. It wasn't a great play in the end, but we forced them to start deep in their own territory. They immediately went to a 3 and out. and we got the ball back. And that's when the fun started.
Thankfully.
Yeah, it did, and but there was still a feeling like, oh, this is now I'm really going to get crushed, because yeah, they're showing life, and yeah, they're gonna put some points on the board, but maybe it's gonna be too little too late, or something's gonna come up short, and you just were on edge in that last 8 minutes of the game.
Go from where we were, right? At that point in the game, we had made it into New Orleans territory 4 times, including twice inside the New Orleans 30, and had a big goose egg on the scoreboard. We had nothing to show for all of our ability to move it into New Orleans territory, into scoring position. And yeah, there was absolutely agita in the stands as far as, well, are we going to be able to do this? But fundamentally, that agita, that tension that we had of not doing it previously, made the end of the game that much better.
Well, and not only that, though, but it didn't seem like one guy in particular, I would argue, one Mr. Jordan Love, seemed rattled at all, right? This is where, if 10 years from now, 15 years from now, whatever, we're sitting around where we have our third Hall of Fame quarterback, we could maybe look back to this game and go, okay, you've got a situation here where this guy probably should have been rattled. He sucked the fourth quarter last game. The offense, or just in general, was ineffective for almost a full game at this point. And okay, no problem. And here we go. And just the touch passes, the longer passes. This wasn't a dink and dunk kind of situation. That's what excited me. And that's what is exciting to watch, right? You're not getting these 5-yard dump off passes and, oh, let's hope to hell he runs for, another 10 or 15 yards after the catch. They're throwing the ball downfield to a bunch of rookie wide receivers who are making some pretty amazing catches.
Yeah, you're going back to that theme that we've talked about, going back to the first day of training camp. You saw poise in Jordan Love. You saw moxie in Jordan Love. You saw an unflappability in Jordan Love. You saw somebody who was going to rise to the moment rather than somebody who's going to sink in the moment. And that's what we saw in the fourth quarter more than anything.
As we've talked about, it would be really awesome if we got more than like a half or a quarter or two. But by the same token, oh my God, was that exciting. And it was a mix of everything. It was throwing the ball downfield. It was him running. He's not a run-first quarterback. He's never going to be, nor should he be. But sort of like Rodgers, and you never know, that he's certainly capable, that if he pulls that thing down, he can go for quite a while.
And not only is there no loss of confidence as the game is going on, either by Jordan Love or by his coach in him,
right?
But there's a gain in, not only a gain in confidence in the game, but a gain in confidence that's going to go on in perpetuity, right?
Yes.
Because this is that anchor now that the team can look back on and say, look, we did this, we can do it again. We have the faith, we have that ability to say we are never out of a ball game, and that is certainly something that a young team needs to grow from.
It was a perfect antidote to the previous week in Atlanta, where they basically fell apart when they needed to show up the most, when they just needed to convert.
It was the exact opposite outcome. So here we had been dominating 3 quarters in Atlanta, and then sort of didn't dominate or played very poorly in the fourth quarter in Atlanta. And this was sort of the reverse. The offense certainly didn't play well the first 3 quarters, but guess what? They were just on fire in the fourth quarter, but in a really productive, not, oh my God, we just got to chuck it up and hope for the best kind of thing. These were measured drives. These were big, long, 80-yard drives.
Yeah, the 2 touchdown drives are both 80-yard drives. But the other thing is, on those touchdown drives, things that did not connect in the first half, and there were a lot of plays in the first half that were really close, that just, got tipped out right at the last minute, that ended up being plays that, where there's defensive pass interference, whether it was a huge catch, where there was pulling something out of the air with one hand, the plays that didn't work in the first 2.5 quarters worked in the final quarter and a half.
Well, and that's where the excitement comes in, right? Because you've got these young receivers, like, okay, we're not going to give up on them. We're going to keep throwing to them. And holy cows, what benefits are they providing with these crazy catches? I watched a thing on Twitter earlier today, the top 3 least probable catches, and the top one, it was about a 25% chance of a catch. And it It was amazing. They're snatching the ball out of the air. But it's exciting to see the momentum, the confidence. Like, okay, this can be done. He's throwing the receivers open. He's throwing it where nobody's going to pick it off. But yet the receivers go up and get the ball, and it's fantastic and exciting to watch.
And unlike last week, where we had questions about the coaching calls, that going for it on the 2-point conversion when everyone assumes that we're just going to kick it, get ourselves in a position that hopefully we get another touchdown, go to overtime. It's like, no, now is the opportunity to go for the 2-point conversion. If you make it, that's great. Now you've got an advantage in the game. If you don't, well, you know what you've got to do. But you've got that opportunity to put the defense on their heels. A 6-point game from the defense's perspective is very different from a 7-point game. There's a lot more fear on that defense when it's only a 6-point game.
Again, the most important statistic of the game, that final score, 18-17. Neil, what other big statistics did you see to wrap up the game?
Let's look at the overall numbers for first downs in the second half. We beat New Orleans 14-5 in first downs in the second half, 10-3 in the fourth quarter. In the second half, New Orleans was 1 of 7 on third down, 0-4 on third down in the fourth quarter. We had 225 yards of offense and 185 yards of passing in that second half. That is, we almost had as many yards of offense in the second half as New Orleans had in the entire game. New Orleans also shot themselves in the foot in contrast to what happened to us the first 2.5 quarters with 5 penalties for 87 yards in that fourth quarter. Overall, love in the fourth quarter. 7 completions, 104 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. Also 2 huge defensive pass interferences that moved the ball forward. Overall, really just a perfect game by the offense. And you look at the numbers for New Orleans, our defense played really, really well. Jordan Love and the offense are going to get all the plaudits, but if the defense does not hold New Orleans to 0 points in that second half, we're not having the same discussion.
Well, speaking of 0 points in the second half, though, going back to last week, I know my closing statement was, I'm hoping for a little Lambeau mystique in this game. Well, maybe we got it with that field goal that was pushed just a little bit to the right. That was just delicious to watch that, right?
Yes, there was this feeling of dread as they moved down, and thankfully they got conservative once they got in field goal range. You can see, if you're on YouTube, you can see the viewpoint that I had for that field goal. It was coming right toward me. When it came right off his foot, you could tell that he had missed that field goal from that angle. It was just, wow, what an incredible stroke. And yes, we would have had some time to try to make up 2 points if he had made it. I'm glad that we didn't have to do that. I'm glad we could have 3 kneel downs by Jordan Love in order to finish off that game. Victory formation is the best way to end a game.
So how bonkers is the crowd then, Neil, inside when that field goal misses? There's 1:06 on the clock.
I think in the year of 2023, the best thing you could say is I have no photos and no videos of anything. I was just celebrating. That was just a perfect, pure celebration, pure happiness moment. We were all in the moment, and the Packers were too. And the fact that everyone was just there and doing what they needed to do, everyone in the crowd is just experiencing the moment. It was absolutely perfect.
So the folks I was watching it with, they missed the field goal, and I look over and I'm like, holy shit, they won.
Right. What exactly did we witness on Sunday?
Our special teams, we had penalties on special teams. We had the special teams return of the punt return. We had penalties on our first 6 drives. Stupidity disfavored us in that game, but Jordan Love and the offense saved us. We had a lot of opportunities to lose. We made sure that we looked at those opportunities to lose, did not look at those opportunities to lose and say, this is what our team is. We said, here's an opportunity to win. We're going to do what we need to win. We won that game. We won that game rather than allowing all the previous failures and mistakes in order to stop us.
Are you ready to wrap it up, Neil?
Sure. Go ahead, John.
Are you ready? Are you sure? Keep that in, all right? Final score, 18-17, a great end of the game. Really, I think is going to help a short week as well. We'll talk about that in a bit, but it was a big culmination of the weekend in general. Neil had come home. We had some great times over the weekend. I think tailgating went well. On Sunday, Jeff, I'm sorry you missed it. It was a beautiful day in Green Bay. The weather was perfect day all the way through. Our friend Kate, who we talked to, her tailgate party, we stopped by and said hi to her. Neil, you got to go to an Arsenal match in the morning as well. You had, at least it wasn't a terrible turnout on that match.
It was a draw in the North London Derby. It was
Called it a
fun. It
draw.
was fun seeing all of my Arsenal fans. And honestly, the fact that a draw against Spurs is a disappointment for Arsenal fans says a lot about where we are now compared to where we were, say, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
And we did have a goal to find Chili John style chili. We did not have to go to any restaurants in town because I remembered my mom has a recipe for it, and she was very willing to put it together quickly for us. So Neil and I had a nice lunch at my parents' house on Saturday, and we gassed it up, didn't we, Neil? It was some good chili.
I think I'm just recovering now, quite to be fair, but
your stomach is done exploding. But yeah, the Chili John style chili, and we threw some noodles in there, and we tried it without the noodles. We did with beans, without beans. We mixed it up a little bit. We did it all different ways, and we posted some pictures online as well. And even with it being a short week and even being a gold package game on Thursday, we're still going to keep tailgating. Tailgating went really well on Sunday, a great start to the season. We're going to be back on Thursday as well. But Neil, it was a good day all around. Lots of people out. Not a lot of black and gold, though, I was surprised to notice on Sunday.
I was shocked by how few Saints fans were there. I guess they're beaten down from how their team has done the last few years. But yeah, even going back to Friday night, we were out at the Stadium View. Saturday night, we were out. We did not see a lot of Saints fans overall, just out and about the town on either of those two nights. And that certainly came through as far as the game was concerned. I think I interacted with 2 Saints fans total as far as the tailgating was concerned. I saw a couple more at Stadium View on Saturday night, but not, it's one of the smallest road contingents of fans that I've ever seen at Lambeau Field, which was shocking. And honestly, we lost the opportunity to have fun with Saints fans because we knew that they were going to be fun.
Well, shocking for a team that does travel well. And I would say that I don't recall seeing more than 20 to 25 Saints fans come through our area. So, limited area. Typically, we get a congregation of the visiting fans because it is kind of a safe spot or a free spot for everyone to congregate, and we just didn't really see those Saints fans. Not a lot of black and gold out there, and not as many beads as I expected. I got a chain, but I was expecting more beads because that's what we do when we're in New Orleans.
Neil, where are your beads?
I was hanging out with Kate at her tailgate. I went right to John's tailgate, so it was an abbreviated tailgate with the North London Derby, but I certainly got to experience everything that was at Lambeau within the brief period. And the Lot 1 tailgate is always a blast. I think that's the core. And Kate's tailgate was also a lot of fun. She had a really big group there. By the time I was there was about 25 people in her group. They were interviewed by 97.5. There's a great video you can find online of Jan leading the crowd to a cheer. I was in the back of that. They had a fun group. The only thing else I'll say with that is that I'm looking forward to tailgating with Kate again, but I'm going to make sure that I never play a game of Flip Cup with her because she's going to kick anyone's ass that she plays against.
She's got skills, huh, Neil?
Yep. It was really impressive. Like, her team was down at least twice, and it's like, boom, gets her, bam, bam, whoop, it's on. That's over.
Don't mess with a woman who knows how to flip cup. And just a few other notes. As far as week 3 around the league goes, the Miami Dolphins scored 70 points. And as far as our lifetime is concerned, it was the first 70-point NFL game out there. And nicely enough, they trounced down the Denver Broncos 70-20. Hopefully that's going to drive down ticket prices to some future Bronco home games, right?
Yeah, except the Packers winning is not helping in that regard, but I will gladly pay extra for games in Denver if the Packers keep doing well.
So how about that Miami team? 70 points? Seriously?
70 points, 726 yards. And on top of it, considering all of the 70-point games in NFL history, all of them had at least one interception return, punt return, kickoff return, or something like that. It is the first NFL game in which the offense scored 10 touchdowns in a game.
Wow.
And 10 extra points.
They do not have asshats, as it turns out.
And you might look at that on the surface and say, wow, the Denver Broncos really shit the bed, but really they weren't the bed shitter of the week. That honor has to go to the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys, Neil, you've been pumping them up for weeks. And this is a team that is just riding a wave. They're on top. They've got Super Bowl aspirations, and they are facing the Arizona Cardinals, a team that can't put 2 and 2 together, a team that people are suspecting is tanking intentionally to get the number 1 draft pick, and then bam.
But what the hell happened?
It's the NFL. Anything can happen in 1 week in the NFL. And more importantly, The Cardinals have been better than everyone has thought this year. They've been within a touchdown every game that they've played. And I think this, as much as anything, was a Trayvon Diggs ACL hangover. They had a team that was devastated by the loss of their defensive leader, certainly a person who is a candidate for defensive player of the year if he plays all year at the level he did. And you lose your team leader, and it's something that's going to have an impact. And how they recover from that is going to be the key to how their season turns out. But obviously a bad day. It's 1 week in the end. Kansas City lost to Detroit in week 1. That doesn't seem to have impacted them in week 3 for sure.
That's true, but there was a lot of hype. Dallas this seemed like unfathomable almost, right? I mean, they were on a roll, right? I mean, they were historically good on it from a defensive standpoint, and they were completely pedestrian in week 3. So I mean, yeah, you're right. Okay, one guy and is very clearly very important to this team, but I just didn't expect that big of a drop off. I mean, they weren't playing the Bears. Okay, let's face it. But still, it seemed improbable that there would be this big of a drop off or a letdown. But like you said, it's only 1 week and you never know what you're going to get. So it means basically Dallas is beatable, though.
Football's an emotional game. And because you've lost your leader, that's going to have an impact. And I can see them rallying in future weeks, or I can see them falling off. I guess that's the thing. You just don't know what direction that team is going to take. You don't know what the internal leadership is. That's going to determine the course of their season. But I don't think that this is a fatal flaw as far as their season. I think they still can win the NFC, although I think there are plenty of other teams that have shown that they've got that ability as well. One of those is not the Bears, however.
Neil, I'm not going to cry about a Dallas Cowboys loss, so let's not worry about that one. There are, however, 4 teams in the league that are now 0-3, but one of them, Jeff, in your town, the Los Angeles Chargers, make their way into Minnesota. They walk away with a win, 28-24. The Vikings, who last season won a lot of these one-possession games or one-score games, and this year they just can't seem to get out of their own way. They can't even seem to get out of their own head or their own ears, for that matter. Just what the hell happened in Minneapolis this weekend?
As we've documented here prior, they were 11-0 in one-score games last year, which was highly improbable. And as we predicted, they would regress at least towards a mean. Well, now they're 0-3 in one-score games, right? Yeah. So, I mean, they kind of got there a little faster, perhaps, than most people thought. But so, again, you've got this juggernaut of an offense, 300-plus yards passing. Justin Jefferson is still lighting it up. The running game kind of kicked in this week as well. But they had sort of a little problem with playing at home in that the home crowd was too loud. Which generally isn't a problem, but the local fans got a little bit overzealous. They were cheering their Vikings team on to what they thought would be a victory, a fourth quarter drive, coming down late, looks like they're going to score, and it just got too loud. Kirk Cousins could not hear the play call from the sideline. He kind of stalled. He still couldn't hear the play call. So he basically just took it upon himself to call a play that ultimately ended in failure.
I'm just going to go back to my general mantra. Vikings fans are bad fans. Eagles fans are bad people. The Vikings fans proved their bad fandom in that game by yelling when the offense needed them to shut the fuck up.
Well, fortunately for the Vikings, they will be away from their super genius fans. The Vikings travel to Carolina. There are 4 winless teams, and they happen to be matching up against each other. So the Vikings going to Carolina to play the Panthers, and the Broncos are in Chicago at the Bears. The interesting thing about this, both of the home teams are currently underdogs in the spread. Both home teams are plus 3.5 right now, meaning that they're not favored. So naturally, I can see the Bears not being favored, but Panthers maybe just aren't living up to expectations right now. And the Denver Broncos definitely need a win. This Broncos-Bears game is going to be an exercise in futility.
Well, it's kind of the Super Bowl, right? Because, I mean, whomever loses is probably going to get a top 5 pick, if not worse, right? We've seen all kinds of dysfunction with the Bears, with the whole organization, whether it's things getting stolen from the stadium, whether it's their quarterback saying he's being coached to be robotic. Well, okay, so there's beyond dysfunction here, and their record clearly shows that, and we'll see if they win any games this year, frankly.
Yeah, Russell Wilson was not atrocious in the game against the Dolphins. It's just the Dolphins offense was that good. But who was atrocious was Justin Fields. Kansas City won 41-10, but pre-garbage time when it was 41-0 late in the third quarter, Justin Fields was 6 of 15 for 42 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interceptions, 3 sacks for a loss of 12. That is 30 yards net on 18 dropbacks. That's a 1.7 yard per attempt net passing during the part of the game that mattered up to the point where it was 41-0. That is absolutely atrocious.
Those of us who weren't at the game took advantage of watching that debacle and watching as
you watched it, so we wouldn't have to. Thank you.
exactly. I took one for the team. So, and I can appreciate Neil's moniker there with Taylor's version, an homage perhaps to as a Swiftie for all the buzz now between Miss Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. And certainly she was featured prominently cheering on Mr. Kelce in that game. But oh my God, it was so lopsided. I mean, I'm not going to feel sorry for the Bears, just like I'm not going to feel sorry for Dallas. But it was almost like it was kind of one of those like mercy rule thing. I don't want a catastrophic injury to happen to anybody, but like maybe the game just at the end of the third quarter have been like, all right, we're done. We're just this is futility, right? I mean, it's just like you said, Neil, through most of the game, Fields was atrocious. They couldn't do anything. Now, is Kansas City that good? Well, they're good. Sure, they have Super Bowl aspirations, but holy cows, it just stunk the place up.
Yeah, but they were in the presence of royalty, right? You had Mama Kelce, who is royalty in the NFL. You had Taylor Swift, royalty. Mama Kelce is telling stories about Travis on the T-ball team. It was glorious. I didn't see it until afterwards, but how can you root against the Kansas City Chiefs at this point when they've got the Kelce mom and Taylor Swift together? This is what the NFL is made for. This is where we are in 2023. Taylor Swift has to become a part of every story. The Kansas City Chiefs are winning the Super Bowl as long as Travis Kelce continues dating Taylor Swift.
I tell you one thing, it sure helped his jersey sales for starters, right? Among it and his social media following and lots of other peripheral things that are going in Travis Kelce's favor.
Yes, the super merger that the world needed right now is the NFL and Taylor Swift. Somewhere Gary Bettman is asking, couldn't she have dated a hockey player? All right, there's only one other team in the NFC North that we really have been worrying about, and that is the Detroit Lions, and that is the team that is coming into Green Bay this week. It is Thursday night. It's going to be on Amazon Prime. If you're local, though, you do get to watch the game on NBC 26, so they will still carry it locally. You don't have to worry about having the Amazon Prime, but outside of the Green Bay market, that's where the game is going to be. It is a gold package game. So we're looking for our Milwaukee friends on a Thursday. Hopefully they're going to leave work early. Come on up. Tailgating is going to be open. The parking lots are opening at 3:15. Hey, it's a short week for everybody, players, fans alike. Coming off of injury, though, what we do have to look forward to for Thursday night is it sounds like Christian Watson and Aaron Jones will both be playing in this game. Neil, what do you think that means?
I think it means we've got a lot better offense, that's for sure. And we're going to need that because Detroit's defense certainly has played well so far this season, better than certainly our expectations are. And let's just look at their game against the Falcons this week. We played the Falcons the week before, so we know what their strengths are. Bijan Robinson was held to only 33 yards of offense in that game against the Lions last week. Overall, Atlanta only had 20 rushes for 44 yards in that game. And globally on the season, Detroit is only allowing 3.2 yards per attempt rushing through those 3 games. And oh, by the way, their defense had 7 sacks of Desmond Ridder for minus 62 yards in that game. Now you can hope that maybe Atlanta was in a little bit of a hangover. They were on the road from having a dramatic come from behind victory the week before. That's the hope. Certainly Detroit's defense has not been something we've thought of as one of their strengths this year, but they at least gave us something to think about. But we're going to have a lot better chance with Aaron Jones, with Christian Watson, with more weapons to add to these young players that are really growing as a unit.
It's going to be great. I mean, historically, right, since the early 90s, the Packers in Green Bay, in Wisconsin, have dominated Detroit. Now, kind of going back and forth on this, and Detroit, came in last year and certainly, obviously beat us in that last game of the year. They swept us last year. which was really unusual, almost historic, at least from the last like 3 decades. So I think there might be a little let's kind of like not have that happen again. I hope the coaching staff is certainly pointing that out. But this is the first of 2 Thursday games against Detroit, which is super weird, which is also very historic, as it turns out. This has only happened one other time where two teams have faced each other during the season, both times on Thursday. And that was back in 1926, folks. The Chicago Bears and the Chicago Cardinals. And it's at home. Obviously, it's a short week. We get two of our premier offensive playmakers back. And I'm hoping that that's going to be the difference.
And the fact that we're playing at home and they have to travel on a short week. One other thing about the Lions, though, as far as their offense is concerned, they are now at 12 straight games of 20 or more points. So just like the Saints actually continued their streak of 11 straight games of allowing 20 or fewer points, the Lions are on a streak of 12 in a row of 20 or more. Their offense is obviously good. But I'm going to go back to the point Jeff made. The Packers are 28-4 against the Lions in Wisconsin since 1992. Last year was an anomaly, and yes, the Lions stunk for a lot of that period. They haven't been as good as they are right now. But I think that we have the advantage no matter what with this short week in Green Bay, and we've got to take advantage of that. A couple of other points as far as statistics on the year. Fundamentally, Detroit's offense is 8th in the league in yards per game. They're 7th in the league in passing yards per game. They're also 11th in defensive yards allowed per game. They are ahead of us both in offensive and defensive yards per game. Although I will note, more importantly, we're ahead in points offensively and defensively, but we're actually two really evenly matched teams, and it should be a really good game. I think that this is going to tell us a lot about where this season is going to go, about where this team is. It should be a fun game, despite the fact that it's not going to be perfect because it's on a Thursday night.
But this is also, I would argue, for the supremacy in the North. We've already played the Bears. We've already beat the Bears. Okay, that's great. So we're both 2-1, but this is really going to kind of that gap because we're the two sort of favorites in the division. And a win here is going to be huge. Both games are on national stages as well. And I remember when we were talking at the beginning of the year, we're making our picks and things like that. I was really hoping that this team, even as a young team, on these big stages, on these national stages, would say, okay, we're going to show up. This is exciting, especially for a lot of these rookies. This is their first Thursday night game, but that's still a big deal. All eyes are on them. And they're at home. It's a short week, back-to-back home games, and I'm super excited. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I really do. I think we're going to see lots and lots of points, and I think Jordan Love is going to get his first 300-yard game.
That is a big, bold prediction because I was looking at it, as being maybe a tough game for our offense because Detroit's defense is playing so well, and the fact that their defense stifled us in 2 games last year. There's a big hump that this Packers squad has to get over to show that they can beat the Detroit Lions. You look at what Detroit did with Kansas City, and now last week with Atlanta. I think this is a team that maybe they are a bit up and down, but because of the Seattle game in between there. The thing to remember with Detroit, though, is nobody loses a game like the Detroit Lions either. So if they just don't come ready to play on a short note, then that can, you're right, Jeff, that can fare well for our offense. And it could be a very explosive game for this crowd, primetime under the lights Thursday night.
Well, and I think the defense is going to be looking to continue on. Rashawn Gary has had huge success in his limited play this year so far, and he's good at home. Again, the crowd is going to be going nuts. He's probably going to make a difference in putting pressure on Goff because he's a pocket passer. This dude is not going to be running all over the field. And so this is really kind of the first pocket passer that they're going to be able to get their hands on, so to speak. I think that's advantage to our defensive line as well.
Just continuing on Rashawn Gary, he is now on a pace of a sack every 14.3 snaps. He only played 23 snaps against New Orleans, got 3 sacks, 4 total quarterback hits. He's going to continue to build up the total number of snaps played. And yes, you're right. Against a pocket passer, it's a perfect situation, but it's also a perfect situation for all of those other pass rushers to start to contribute, because Detroit has to take into account Rashawn Gary. And if they're really taking into account Rashawn Gary, guess what? There are a lot of other guys who can also make the sack. Unlike Jeff, I am of the opinion that this is a game that could go explosively in either direction. I could see this as a very explosive defensive game where there are a lot of big plays on defense, where the offenses both have problems moving. I could see it go the way Jeff is saying as well. It's Thursday night. Anything can happen on Thursday night. Defense generally has the advantage, but I'm looking forward to a fun game.
All right, and we've made picks on this one. Either of you want to change your prognostication for the Thursday night match?
No.
Jeff, you had this as a win. You're sticking with a win. Neil?
I also think this is a win for the Packers.
All right. Well, I have it down as a loss. I'm going to hold on to that one just because I think that the Packers will be 3-2 going into the bye, and I don't see them losing to the Raiders. So that's where my pick is going to go. But, I'll be ecstatic with a win as well.
John, I'll just note in the conference pool, you're once again in last place, just like you were last year. So
geez. You had to bring that up, did you? Talk about kick a guy when he's down.
Ouch. All right.
Jesus.
And being the kind of nerd that looks at calendars and moon cycles and things like that, Neil, this home game Thursday night is on September 28th. The Packers' next home game is October 29th. There will be 2 full moons in between those 2 games. The full moons are Friday, the 29th of September, and then again on October 28th. That's just an anomaly on the cycle there to get the 2. It'll look like a full moon Thursday night, but it is not official until Friday.
As long as there's not a Randy Moss full moon, I'm okay with it.
Agreed.
The other thing is, after this Thursday night game ends, Green Bay has just 1 game over the next 23 days. So from Friday, September 29th until we land in Denver, the only game is Green Bay at Las Vegas on that Monday, October 9th. So the October schedule just gets really weird, and there's going to be a lot of rest, a lot of downtime for them to be ready to play when week 7 rolls around, when we see them on the road. We'll have a lot to talk about between now and then. Thursday night games, Jeff, you already kind of touched on it. The Packers and the Lions get to play twice on Thursday night. This year, there haven't been a lot of Thursday night games, or Thursday day games for that matter, for the Packers. But what does history tell us about the Packers and Thursdays?
Well, interestingly enough, the Packers on Thursdays haven't actually been very good. And I think that's for a couple reasons. So the Packers' all-time record on Thursdays, so Thanksgiving and since the league started playing Thursday night games in 1991, their all-time record is 23, 28, and 2 since 1991. So you think, okay, the record's got to be much better. Well, it's about 500. It's 13-12 and 9-8 on non-Thanksgiving Day games. So there's been a bunch of quarterbacks, historically throughout that time. But what's fascinating is, since 1950, only 2 Packers starting quarterbacks have winning records on Thursdays. Would you gentlemen care to guess the 2?
So one of them's got to be either Favre or Rodgers. I'll lean
one of them Favre. Indeed is Aaron Rodgers.
I was not going to guess Favre because Detroit was not a fun place for him.
Yes. So Aaron Rodgers is 11-5 on Thursday nights as a starter.
You went back to the 50s. I'll throw Babe Parilli out there as my guess.
No, Babe's 0-2.
Oh,
this is a gentleman. His record is 1-0 on Thursdays.
Tobin wrote.
Nope. Tobin is actually 1-4.
Oh my gosh.
Let's go Lynn Dickey then.
Lynn Dickey's 0-1.
Don Mikowski.
0-1.
All right. Where's Bart Starr on that list, Jeff?
2-5-1.
2-5-1. My goodness. We're really screaming. Did David Whitehurst play on a Thursday game?
He did not.
Scott Hunter, Jerry Taggy. I'm really scraping the barrel here, Jeff.
Nope. Matt Flynn, he's 0-1. So we're still not there yet.
I'll cry uncle.
Randy Wright.
Oh my gosh.
Wow, John, your number's sake. Your number's sake.
Randy Wright and Aaron Rodgers are the only 2 Packer starting quarterbacks.
Wow.
Yeah. Rogers is 11-5. Randy Wright is 1-0. As mentioned.
How do I scrape the bottom of the barrel and not mention Randy Wright's name?
Oh my God. So
because we loved Randy Wright in the end. It's just, it didn't work
That is
out.
true. That is true.
As mentioned, so Favre is 3-5, Stars 2-5-1, Tobin Rote 1-4, Babe Pirelli 0-2, Matt Flynn 0-1, Lynn Dickey 0-1, and Don Mikowski is 0-1. So yeah, just Thursdays haven't been kind to Packer quarterbacks. So that being said, Mr. Jordan Love has an opportunity to go 1-0 and hopefully the first of many wins on Thursday.
All right. Well, it is a short week. So any short final thoughts from either of you?
We've got the opportunity to reset this team with Aaron Jones returning, with Christian Watson returning. We've had a lot of deficiencies as far as penalties, as far as mistakes made by young players on a young team. Fundamentally, against the Saints, one of the problems we had is our running backs weren't actually that good. And specifically in the second half, our running backs actually stunk. We were 9 rushes for 16 yards in that second half. It was a great second half for the Packers against the Saints. We need to do a lot better than that. This defense of the Lions is a good defense against the run, but they haven't faced a team as motivated as one with Aaron Jones as this young Packers team. We're going to need contributions from everybody in order to beat this Detroit Lions team. Bring it on.
Agreed, Neil. I'm excited. Like I said, I'm looking for Jordan Love to start his ownership, his legacy, whatever you want to call it, against the Lions in this primetime game. This is really the opportunity for the Packers to shine on a national game, to show that, yes, they're young, but they're exciting. And hopefully we're going to see a lot more of these primetime, really exciting games.
And for me, it's a gold package game on a Thursday. All I'm asking the Milwaukee fans to do is just take some PTO time on Thursday, leave after lunch, get to Green Bay. If you think that you're in Milwaukee, if you think you're going to work until 5 o'clock and then head to Green Bay for a 7 o'clock game, just go fuck yourself right now, okay? Because it's not going to work.
All right. And take Friday off while you're at it too.
Take Friday off while you're at it too. All right, let's go. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and leave a comment behind the GBC podcast at Green Bay Chat. That's all one word. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and Spotify. Facebook, the GBC podcast, Green Bay Chat. You'll get some tailgating updates on social media on Thursday as well. And as always, may you fully appreciate the magnitude of your impending good fortune, unless you think you're going to leave at 5 o'clock in Milwaukee. Thanks for joining us.
Go Pack, go.
Good night.